echo. Is that me?
Is that better?
Hmm. Perfect. All right, so hi everyone. Welcome back or welcome to TOPA Tuesday. My name is Matt. I am the LATTC Policy Fellow at Trust South LA. Today, you met her last week. This is Fanny Ortiz from Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre. And we also have Roberto, who is also with Fideicomiso. Before we get into it, can we get some intros from everybody here?
Sure. Thank you so much for doing this exciting episode of Topa for LA, Matt.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
glad to do it.
my name is Fanny Ortiz. I am a co-founding member and a board member for Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre. We were founded by community leaders in 2018. But prior to that, we were already exploring since 2017 how a community land trust would look in our community of Boyle Heights and East LA. But
Hmm.
before we go on, let's allow Roberto to introduce himself.
Please.
Yeah. Hey everyone, my name is Roberto Garcia Ceballos. I'm a co-founder of Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre. Been an organizer on this project since the inception uh, and just to say that this community land trust and this development has really taken a lot of years, like Fanny said, since 2017, and even prior to that, just a lot of organizing in Boyle Heights and East LA and all through LA. And that there's a lot of people who were also co-founders of Fideicomiso who are not here today, but it's just always good to remember them and like hold space for them because yeah, it took a lot of community to get to the point where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And since today we're focusing on Fideicomiso, maybe you can share with us some of this history of folks who have come to organize with Fideicomiso and the formation of the organization and how y'all got to where you are today.
Um, should I go, Roberto, or do you want
Sure.
to
Yeah,
go?
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. First of all, I'm excited to be here representing Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre. As Roberto mentioned, it's many members that are part of the creation of Fideicomiso.
Hmm.
Some of the members that were co-founding members are no longer in our community, that were displaced. And in memory of that, of the work that they've done, um, it's why one of the biggest reasons why I'm here as well. Since we're constantly fighting displacement and gentrification in our communities, um, we, after many years of working and advocating for affordable housing on and implemented changes in metro lots, we realized that the community had no say so in the housing that was being built. And so the alternative was looking and exploring what a community land trust will look in the east side.
Okay.
And so as member organizers of Community Power Collective, we have been aligned in the work plan where we organize with tenants. Um, and so Community Power Collective is primarily focusing on organizing tenants, but we also do some of that work, but we're primarily focusing as a CLT in the infrastructure of the development.
Mm.
Um, but it's been work, it's been years of work since probably even before 2017, but we're just naming 2017 as the year, and so and
Excuse me.
that is why we're here, excited to be sharing the work that we've been working collectively, um, And so before we became a nonprofit organization, we were holding workshops throughout Boyle Heights and East LA, and talking to the neighbors, to the community, and exploring the different ideas and reimagining how our community would look like. And after a couple of years of working collectively and also building relationships,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is where we're at in our third year of Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre. We just acquired our first building a couple of weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yay! But I think it's also important to say that it's not because we're doing this work alone. It's because we're getting a lot of support
Mm-hmm.
from all the local organizations and the relationships we're building through coalitions. And those relationships have brought us here to this specific moment which you met. Because
Yeah.
you're representing Trust LA, who is a member of the LACLT coalition, as well as a member of the California CLT network. And so that's one way of us connecting our work that
Mm-hmm.
we're doing locally, regionally, and statewide as well. Um, and so, yeah, I'll let Roberto talk a little bit more. I don't want to take too much space as well.
Yeah, for sure. Roberto, please.
Yeah, I mean, support a lot everything that Fanny said, and
Mm-hmm.
I think just to say that we're the first community land trust in East LA and Boyle Heights is like a very significant thing. I know that there's like community development corporations. We were actually incubated in a
Mm-hmm.
community development corporation, and
Okay.
which is like ELAC, or East LA Community Corporation. And
Wait, for folks who may not know that, can you just briefly explain what that might be?
yeah. So ELAC made space in their programming to have community members and organizers,
Mm-hmm.
create a community land trust. And this year, so that started in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
and prior to that, a lot of us had been engaged in anti-displacement campaigns, um, to make sure that there was affordable housing in the neighborhood, and to stop any for-profit speculator trying to develop on public land in Boyle Heights.
Got you.
And so after, while doing that organizing, we realized that, community residents and folks from the neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
needed a tool to have more control over decision making over what happens on land. And we realized that there was limitations to just developing affordable housing through a community development corporation.
Okay.
Even though we want affordable housing, we still felt that there was a need for residents to have a say in the way, in the stewardship of land and housing, beyond affordable housing, beyond the affordable housing models that kind of just build housing, provide the housing for tenants, and that's kind of like it kind of replicates the same engagement that
Got you.
of like the landlord tenant relationship.
It's
And
not
so
really transformative.
yeah, even though it does provide that housing that people need, and it's like one of those things that took years of organizing and education for us to get to a point with other residents in the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
to say like, no, you know what, like we want something even better, or we want more. And so the community land trust was kind of an idea that was like seeded in the neighborhood, and that a lot of people already had that concept of like stewarding land together, of working together, of like cooperation, and it just needed like a structure for us to like practice that in organization. And so that's like where the community land trust came. And yeah, and like Fanny said, we a lot of us did the workshops. A lot of us participated. A lot of us stayed committed to the idea and the practice of building a community land trust
Mm-hmm.
in Boyle Heights and East LA. And actually during this pandemic, the community development corporation that we were in went into a crisis and pretty much had to let go of the CLT.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing about community land trusts and the way they're built is that it provides ownership to those who are a part of it. And so, we just picked ourselves up. We didn't need the space. We just convened in whatever way we could, and kind of took over the organization without without the CDC that was like supporting us, because there was that much empowerment, there was that much ownership of the organization, where folks felt they could just take control of
Mm-hmm.
what was theirs. And so since 2020, towards the end, since 2020, we've been completely independent of any other organization that's supporting us, besides the technical support that we get from like LAFLA, the LA
Mm-hmm.
CLT Coalition, the California CLT Network, and like other folks that just like show us a lot of love, like Sandra McNeil, John Davis, and just other folks who are like been doing this community land trust work for a while. So it's just great to see how community, like, a lot of people say like, oh, like residents can't do that, or
Mm-hmm.
community residents just don't have the experience to do something like form an organization and run it. And so the community land trust model that we implemented is a testament that residents could actually have an organization of their own, run it, and have success. And so the building we bought this year through the county pilot program, and the continuation of developing vacant land in the neighborhood, and just being engaged in like membership development,
Mm-hmm.
capacity building, and fundraising has been really great and empowering.
I'm finding so many amazing points from what you're sharing in your story, because from what Fanny was sharing, it was about it was about creating a sustainable movement that moves people along and allows people to grow in their capacity to support. And from what I was getting from your statement was that there's a scrappiness and a grit of needing to do this, of having a new way forward, because the systems as we have it now are not really serving us or giving us the options that we want. So we're creating our own options. And I think like when you were mentioning about how CLT, like the community land trust model, was already within people already knew about it, that speaks something to me too, because last night I was having dinner with a friend, and they were talking about this model in Singapore of ownership, and it modeled the CLT model without the name. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like the CLT model is really about like, reclaiming or going back to reverting to old ways, like ancestral knowledge of how to steward land with and for each other. And the thing that was really powerful, again, as you were sharing your testimony, was how it's not enough to just have affordable housing, but it is necessary and crucial to change and transform the relationship that low-income tenants have with power in terms of housing decisions and housing options.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why your story really resonates with me, just because, like you said, a lot of low-income folks get cut out of the loop and said that they're not able to do it, or they don't know how to do it. But folks innately know how to do this from their ancestral knowledge, and now we just need to guide them onto what the American legal infrastructure looks like to make it a reality. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I think slowly we're trying to practice challenging the perception of affordable housing
Mm-hmm.
in the system that we live in. And yeah, I mean, I think the idea that public housing or affordable housing is something natural, or that's part of like the democracy of this country is actually a flawed. There's been a lot of struggle, one for public housing, and then the struggles that happen within public housing to for community, like for residents to have decision making over what happens,
Mm-hmm.
and then there were struggles to preserve public housing because a lot of it was destroyed. And so that's all connected to like why people need community land trusts today. And then the creation of this like new affordable housing that we have, which is like public financing with very little public financing with a lot of private financing, and the financialization of housing, and
Mm.
how complicated it is to build housing for poor people,
Yeah.
is really like messed up. And so I think those real interactions that people have on a daily basis is what like really pushes folks to want to have an alternative, because we're constantly taught that there is no alternative
Mm-hmm.
to the way housing is created, and the way housing is financed, and the way the rules that are made up for even getting a loan in a low income community to build housing for poor people is like messed up. So in a lot of ways, like as we engage more and the way we grow more, not just us but as a CLT movement across LA, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's empowering us to really uplift like what's wrong with housing in the US, and specifically locally in our communities. So it's like I think that's one of the really exciting things that we get to engage in together as like
Mm-hmm.
a community in Boyle Heights and East LA, and then a community in like LA, and people coming together that are resonating around how we need to push on changing housing conditions.
And as a tenant, I would add the contradictions that we deal as well. I think for me, that's one of the biggest reasons why I do the work I do with the community land trust. You
Mm-hmm.
know, changing the way we are constantly being told that we have to follow certain guidelines, right, in order to keep our
Mm-hmm.
housing,
Mm-hmm.
and yet have no say so in reality of what's happening, who is managing our our homes, our properties where we stay. It's an extractive way of just taking out, you know, from us, but instead of giving us or being inclusive of the decision making process. So the CLT model, it's an alternative to that extractive um, method, and also inclusive of the decision making power. And that's why I'm excited also that we're working on the TOPA campaign
Mm-hmm.
for the LA County, because this is another tool that can empower tenants who normally are not informed when their building is about to be sold, when
That
they're
part.
potentially at risk of being displaced, from their home, their community. Yeah.
That's very true. Well, since we're talking about TOPA, I kind of want to get to this point, but I also wanted to provide space because, like you said, Fideicomiso at the like beginning of the pandemic was kind of separated from the CDC, right? That was ELAC,
Hmm.
and y'all picked up on your own, and um, by passion and determination, y'all got Fideicomiso really going, and there have been some major victories. Would you like to take this time to sort of like share what kind of big milestones y'all have hit as an organization and have done as people powered movement in East LA?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I just noticed that Eva and Margarita are on here. Saludos, Margarita, Eva. Este, um, yeah, so just wanted to give them a shout out. But yeah, victories. I mean, I think, well, no, the victories we've had are we survived the pandemic, and we
T.
we we and we came up. I mean, we're still in the pandemic. There's no like pandemic is over yet.
Mm-hmm.
There's still like millions of people that are struggling. And what I mean by that is that we could have just packed everything up, said, that was a good try. It was an experiment. Maybe wrote an evaluation around it and then just quit, and instead we like packed our stuff up and moved into our homes, and continued to meet up, as a community land trust. One of the biggest victory is that we continue to have elections. We have elections every year, for our board members, to decide priorities as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were still able to have an election this year to ratify and vote in our new board members, new leadership that stepped up during the pandemic, and leadership that continued to come back. So the engagement was still there. Like, members still signed up to be to be part of what is the decision making of the organization. And then physical kind of victories is that, we teamed up with like 4 other CLTs, who some have like a lot of experience and some of them are like new, like we are, to really engage in policy. And I think before I get into the victory, I think during the pandemic, I think we were all thinking the same in terms of like, oh crap, like we're like in a pandemic. It's causing major health issues. It's causing major financial issues. And we know that in this system that we live in, that whenever there's crisis, poor people are the first to be robbed.
Yes.
By capitalist interests. And
yes.
We know that people of color, BIPOC communities are always the targets for some sort of extractive policy that either sells off land, takes benefits away, this like disaster capitalism, right?
Naomi
and
Klein.
So, yeah, and a bunch of other folks. And so a lot of us were like, how do we stop that? How do we like, we know there's going to be federal money coming in. How do we start targeting that money? And so one of the biggest things is we joined the Healthy LA Coalition, which is like a broad-based coalition in LA that does work in the county and the city to make sure that any policy that has to do with people prioritizes the benefit of those people. So we focus on housing. We were like, where's this money at? Like, how's it gonna be spent?
Yes.
Like, who do we talk to make sure that this money like prioritizes the acquisition of housing for community land trusts or even for CDCs, right? Or how do we make sure that there's like a moratorium on rent? How do we make sure that there's a rent freeze? How do we make sure that now we're talking about the cancellation or like making sure that
debt.
Or seize of the debt, right? And so in a lot of ways, like that's another victory that that the way we're organized, the way we're thinking about moving forward is really like making sure that like capitalist interest and corporate greed doesn't take over the actions that need to happen to be able to take care of folks. Yes. And so as community land trusts, and as like community-based organizations like CPC and other, and like Act LA and even some of the tenant unions and some of the work that's going on with tenant organizing is like, yeah, like let's make sure we prioritize our people, because history shows that whenever there's crisis, like we're, our BIPOC communities, poor folks, are always like left out. And so in a lot of ways, like that was a huge victory. And the evolution of that is for community land trust in LA, we were able to get Hilda Solis, SD1, to pass an ordinance to provide $14 million for us to pilot a program for CLTs to acquire small multifamily buildings. And so, one example here in Boyle Heights and East LA is if you go on Zillow and you look at it and you look up a small multifamily building, you'll see that building is being sold. It has tenants in it, and And if you go back to that building a month later, that building potentially is sold already.
Mm-hmm.
It has potential like folks interested in buying them, and it's not the type of people who are going to rehab the building, not increase the rent, and try to stabilize people's like support people and stabilizing them in whatever way they can. It's usually like, you know, a corporate LLC, like some LLC that nobody knows where it comes from. It's a bunch of investors who want to flip the building, get rid of the tenants, and increase the rent. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why we target small multifamily buildings, to make sure that those small multifamily, like, so that we can prove that community land trusts and partners with in partnership with like community development corporations, if needed, should be able to acquire these buildings, stabilize them, rehab them, and figure out a way for tenants to be able to buy the building in the future, in the long term or short term, depending on what the conditions are. And so in
Yes.
a lot of ways, that's the intention of this pilot program. And
Mm-hmm.
so Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre, like Fanny mentioned earlier, was able to buy one of the buildings here in East LA.
I also think that right at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the exciting things that happened was that we received our 501c3 status.
Hey,
So
yes.
that allowed us to like continue the work that we have been doing during the pandemic, and also engaging in building those alliances with all the orgs that are supporting the work we're doing locally, regionally, and statewide as well. Yeah, it's exciting that even though we're going through the pandemic, this has not stopped us. If anything, it's like pushed us to,
Mm-hmm.
work through this current conditions that have affected many and all of us in so many ways. But I think making sure that we protect the most vulnerable in our communities is another reason why we do the work we do as a community land trust and as organizers.
Absolutely. I I'm feeling so like many things from what y'all have shared, especially about how our communities are always impacted first during disaster. I thought about the 2008 recession, where afterwards all the homes got bought up by Blackstone Group, or Invitation Homes, which is based here in LA. You know, the largest single owner of single family homes in the nation.
Mhm.
And then I think about every other time that our communities have been sort of left to fend for ourselves. And what you were sharing is that through this organization, through getting people to reimagine how to structure their immediate neighborhood, folks are reimagining, you know, hold on real quick, I'm sorry. People are able to just reimagine things altogether, you know what I mean? And become empowered by themselves to take control of the situation and change that, right? Change the options that are available to them. And I think that's really exciting because um, now we are in this position where we're talking about the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act here in Los Angeles County, TOPA. And again, this is an opportunity for low income tenants and allies of affordable housing to figure out how can we once again reimagine the structure so that we can continue to provide options or opportunities for low income folks to reclaim power and become full democratic participants in the governance of our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe do you want to share a little bit about why TOPA means so much to you? And before we get into this, I'm going to say that I started working with Trust and with the LACLT Coalition at the beginning of this year, and everything I know about TOPA, I know from Roberto and Fanny. So, like, do you want to share about why this is so important and why Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre is taking the lead on this?
Thank you for being excited just as much as we are. One of the things that when the LACLT coalition was formed, was to make sure that we continue expanding the work we're doing as CLTs. But
Mm-hmm.
we also need, for policy, to support the work we're doing, as well
Mm,
as funding. So this is one of the tools that we can use to strategically make sure that we continue empowering tenants in being part of the decision-making process as using the CLT model. And so TOPA is one of those strategies that we talked about in the beginning, right before the pandemic started, actually.
okay.
And so we know that there's other models, and like I think originally started in Washington, D.C. and in the Bay Area. And so, yeah, we just want to make sure that tenants have a say so and an opportunity to remain in their communities and acquire the
Mm-hmm.
building through a co-op. And I must say that this is as well new to Fideicomiso, um, the co-op part. But just like Roberto mentioned earlier, like we're bringing in the resources to develop our capacities for the CLT members, as
Mm-hmm.
well as us as as the workers, employees that are doing the work as well and getting paid for it. Um, Individually and collectively, we're developing our capacity. So that's that's another way of doing it as well. Implementing policy that's going to empower tenants.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me the exciting part is that, I mean, I think the getting the policy passed is exciting, and I think we're learning to build power as a LA CLT coalition, because we have to do we have to learn about how policy is passed at the county level, how the ordinances work, how do we create strategy with other community-based organizations,
Mm.
etc., right? But I think the other really exciting thing is like Fideicomiso has been going out um, and
Mhm.
and and doing door knocking at buildings that are being sold, because we're tired,
Yes.
because we're just tired of seeing buildings in the neighborhood. I'm tired of going on a walk and seeing another building bought, seeing it get like rehabbed, and then seeing all these folks that just move in, who are now paying more rent and are kind of supporting the increase of the rental market and the housing market in the neighborhood. And I'm just kind of like, okay, well, what's one way to create an intervention to that?
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
for us, even though there isn't TOPA yet, we're already kind of like door knocking at buildings that are being sold,
Yes.
because we want to, we're like, we got to be ready for this.
Mm.
Because
Forward stance.
when we pass this policy, we want to identify all the buildings that are being sold or potentially being sold, and make sure that these tenants are organized as well. And so
Yeah.
that's been like a really, every time I go and do outreach at a building, I feel more motivated to work on the
Mm.
policy aspect of it. Just because yeah, like that's the motivation of saying like, damn, like this 16 unit, this 11 unit, this 4 unit building over here, you get to build a little bit with the tenants while you're outside their house, or you start imagining like, oh, like what if these tenants own their building, wouldn't that be
Mm-hmm.
really dope? um what, and it's, I think that's really empowering for me, and like that really motivates me to kind of go out and do the policy work that sometimes it's not cute, it's sometimes yeah, because I think like imagining people stewarding their own land, their own housing, is like what it really excites me, and like really motivates me for TOPA in the future of LA County.
Okay, and
I
then
could.
just FYI, I'm sorry. I just received a message saying that Fideicomiso made it to the San Francisco Anti-Displacement Coalition email thread. So that's exciting.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't even know what that means, but I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yo, like honestly, this is I think that's really what it is, and what you're saying, it makes me think. That's how I know you're an organizer at heart, because like going out there, knocking on doors, talking to people to face is so it's something that I've been missing during COVID for sure. But also like it really puts a frame of reference on what these policies really are going to do, right? When people are able to communicate with you like how their life would change through one policy, it makes that policy a little bit more real and not just like legalese that is being, worked through by different folks. Not to diminish that work, but I think one word that you said that stood out to me was intervention. And I think right now something about TOPA that excites me is that, again, with system change, it's not enough that we feed the same machine and expect different results. Like the way that affordable housing development is right now, the way housing is not, like the housing need is not being met, throwing more money at it is not going to fix it. We need a different way of doing it. And like you said, this is an intervention. It's something radically different. It's meant to capture, like all these homes that would have otherwise been gobbled up by the market and present a new alternative that is focused on the residents who live there. The residents in this position are now presenting the options rather than being presented with options. And so I feel like that's a really empowering thing about TOPA and why like doing this work means is so important.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think we do need money thrown at it, and it just
Oh,
needs the right,
yeah,
it just needs the right priorities, like,
in a different path.
yeah. Like we need the right priorities for the money, and so
Mm,
if the county, if the city, if the whatever government wants to give us money, like we need a lot of public subsidy, and then we need like better lending in our communities.
better
Uh,
lending.
like, lending hasn't changed at all. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what people say about the civil rights movement. Like, if you look at lending practices, like they're still the freaking same. Like, I'm just gonna say it. Like we need some zero interest loans for 30 years, for 50 years. We need or like very low interest, that's like really kind of going to be supportive of communities really kind of trying to do the development that they want,
Mm,
and not be under pressure to pay a high interest loan uh,
mm-hmm.
with like a short term of like 5 to 10 years. Like that's
Yeah.
that's that's detrimental to our neighborhoods.
It
And
sorry, it feels like another type of redlining,
yeah,
Mm,
preventing us from expanding and becoming homeowners.
so yeah, so as we're doing this TOPA work, we're also thinking about what other things that we need to supplement TOPA.
mm-hmm.
So we need like public, we need more acquisition funding from like that's public money to come, whether it's the state, whether it's the city, whether it's the county, or whether it's the federal government to help us acquire these buildings that are just grants, that they just give us money to go buy buildings, um,
Um,
and
I would
then and
also, I would also add money from philanthropy. There's a lot of it
yeah,
out there.
yeah, philanthropy, and the way that looks like is that we need like actual investment, the way I was describing it earlier. It's not this like short term loan with high interest
Yes.
where we have to figure out how to refinance it in like 5 years and like live under a lot of pressure to
Mm-hmm.
be able to pay the bills. And that's the type of treatment that community development corporations like small CDCs and COTs are getting. Imagine like single family like homes that are trying to buy a house. This is like people power talking.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, imagine like just a BIPOC family trying to buy a home in their neighborhood. What kind of loans are they getting? What kind of interest rates are they getting? And I think another way that we're thinking about TOPA is like what market is really accessible to BIPOC low income families at this moment. We're looking at single family homes getting close to $1 million in LA,
Oh, yeah.
uh, and like people living in apartment buildings are aspiring to buy a home or to own something to be able to build generational wealth, meaning like being able to transfer a home to like their children, or being able to have something that could stay in their family for generations. I'm not talking about being millionaires or like that
Mm-hmm.
type of wealth. I think I'm talking about like the basic necessity that people look for and stability that people look for.
Yes.
And so for us, if we could buy buildings under TOPA and think about some sort of ownership model for the tenants, I think that, that starts restructuring the way we think of like what home ownership looks like, and like start really moving away from the single family home. And yeah, like, and even single family homes, like, do we really need to spend $1 million on a single family home? Like, why not? Why not be able to put, resale formulas that kind of cap how much a home could be sold, and have like really good like loans or like prices for people to buy their home, and then be able to transfer that home to their like generations, or for another low income family to be able to move in. I think that like we just need more options, and this like American dream single family home with the white picket fence is just a lie. Like we need to really be like creating what the future is for us, and not just kind of be in this daydream that one day we're going to be able to like enter this market that has like a huge wall in between us.
Mm-hmm. A huge wall with spikes and a moat.
Yeah.
So like I think this is again like the conversation we're having right now is so impactful because I think like during COVID, a lot of people have been reimagining what their life could look like. And right now, with organizers like yourself on the ground, like meeting people face to face and doing like these these online forums, and also meeting with like policy folks, like um, we are giving people a viewpoint into a new way of seeing this world and how it can be tilted just a little bit away from the guys with buckets and buckets of cash towards the people who actually live here, who make up this community and make things go, and give that little spice and flavor that LA always wants to claim. So before we finish today, is there anything else that y'all wanted to share with folks who are queuing in and joining us from wherever they're at?
I just
Just
wanna
go, Fanny.
I just wanna say that we need all the support that we can get, and I welcome anybody that's interested in supporting at any capacity level the work we're doing, because it's not only impacting our community here in the East Side, but it's gonna we're gonna try to implement the work we're doing all throughout, regionally in LA, but also statewide.
Mm,
And yeah, and so I'm excited about that because we're doing it as a grassroots movement, um, that is gonna make an impactful change, not only for now but for the future generations. We want to make sure that we can continue keeping housing affordable and that we can continue remaining in our communities. And this is just the beginning, with pandemic or not.
period.
Yeah. No, thanks, Fanny. Yeah, I just want to show a lot of love for all the folks who are organizing, all the folks forming tenant unions or tenant associations, or just doing like what it needs to keep people in their homes, or even just supporting people and like filling out whatever forms they need to fill
Mm-hmm.
out so that they're not evicted because they're not paying rent. I think that all that work is really important and is needed. And we wanna collaborate with all the folks who are doing housing justice work at this moment, because we need each other. We need people doing the eviction defense work. We need folks thinking through like how we're gonna get folks who are who defend themselves from being evicted to then becoming owners of their structures, so that we don't have to replicate this like tenant landlord relationship. So
Yes.
just sending a lot of love to those folks, also like to the land trust out there. And then if you're part of a community-based organization, or you're a member of an organization, or you're just an individual like that wants to get involved, please go to our TOPA for LA website and fill out the action survey and endorsement form, so that we could find a way for you to like get involved. We need more people to get involved in so many capacities. You know that we would much appreciate it to continue to build this like people power for community control of land and housing. And so, yeah, thanks for inviting us. And it's, yeah.
No, like honestly, this has been so empowering for me because I'm new to the space and I'm getting to hear firsthand, along with the folks who are joining us about, you know, folks like yourselves and the residents that you organize alongside who have made this happen, you know, and right now, like, you know, we are small, but we are mighty, but we don't need to be small forever. And that's like the cue for y'all to come on and join us, reach out to us, hit us up on social. Like if you have questions, shoot them towards us. You know, the link is in the bio. Please fill out the petition. It's quick, 2 clicks, so that we can bring that to the Board of Supervisors to let them know that the constituency is saying yes to TOPA. And queue in with us whenever we have these little shindigs and we get together. We're breaking bread and we're building community and we're you know, adding more pieces to our collective toolkit on how we can actually make housing a human right, not only here in LA but hopefully across this nation one day. So thank you again, Fanny and Roberto, for joining us on TOPA Tuesday today. Next week, we'll be back again at Tuesday at 6. I'll put a full schedule out on Instagram, but thank you again for everyone for joining us tonight.
Sure.
See ya.
Chee!
See y'all.